Wild Card Weekend Kickoff Show. Doug Shane at Bankster17, Michael Gudadero at the Big Gouda. We are here to teach you what we think works for cash game strategy. Been very successful this year to get you ready for the Wild Card Weekend. 6 games on tap. Still a lot of questions, but games to kick off tomorrow. We're going to be taking a look at the slate, run down the cash game pool. We're going to have a very heavy cash game focus for this live stream. The article written for this week, the Moving the Chains, which is up at banksterdfs.com, $3.99 a week, by the way, to get you access to all of our content. I'll promo that in a second. But the article's there with the heavy cash game focus. Obviously, GPPs are in play, and you can talk about that GPP with us in our Bankster DFS Slack chat, which is part of the banksterdfs.com full suite of services. Doesn't it sound more professional when I say suite of services?
Good wordage.
Articles, right? It sounds good. Fancy pants for $4 a week. $3.99 a week gets you access to all of our daily articles, player pools, and what we believe is the best Slack chat in the business, the community that we're trying to build. Just had a nice talk with Gouda about how I try to do the same thing in my classroom, build community. And we build community in the fantasy community within our Slack chat. Boy, we got a lot coming up. NBA is in full swing. PGA came out of nowhere. Tennis is back. Brandon Matthews is doing tennis. Brian Crozier put out the new PGA article. I believe Tay Wagner told me that MMA is back in a week or two. Obviously, an NBA, NFL playoffs, and NHL comes back on Wednesday. Schedules being hashed out right now. Everyday coverage. Most days, full articles. Short slates. We'll do Slack chat, but that's another reason to come chit chat with us with those player pools. And I think we're going to be doing live streaming once a week, previewing the big Saturday slates. So we should be doing Friday night streams, getting you ready for Saturday NHL. We might do Saturday streams for those. We'll let you know. But a lot of great stuff at Bankster DFS, all for the one price, $3.99 a week. Niche sports, pro sports, college sports, everything. But you're here for football, and I know that. Gouda, we got to do some football. Let's check in with you. How are you doing? How are things going in Gouda's world? What do we got on tap for this weekend NFL? What are you seeing?
I'm great. Things are going well. We're coming off of a big week 17 over at Bankster DFS. We had a very successful end of the season, and we're looking to keep that momentum going in the playoffs. I remember last year we had a great playoff run, and we got to keep that going this year. It's going to be an interesting weekend. There are some nice matchups. I'll have to admit, in the offseason, when they announced they were adding the 2 extra playoff teams, one in each conference this year, I was very skeptical about it. I didn't like it. I thought they were adding for the sake of just having more teams in there, bigger fanfare, money, all that. But it actually worked out pretty well for the first year. It was,
all the other parts are true too, though.
Oh, yes, of course. But I assumed it was just going to be, a snooze fest. Week 17 still wasn't going to mean anything and all that. But week 17 actually was one of the better ones I can remember in a long time. And we've actually got a lot of good playoff matchups this weekend, and we've got a very interesting slate. There's a lot of mispriced guys. There's a lot of value there. It's gonna be a pretty wild one. It's definitely a week where, because we got 6 games this weekend, you can be comfortable playing cash and having one of a safer type of floor type of lineup for going cash. And there's a lot of possibilities for GPP. And these are the type of slates where you start to get creative and you start to need to do things to really differentiate yourself. And, you keep the same mantra that we always talked about. You don't need to get cute, but because when you stack, you start to bring down your collective ownership and the chalkiness of your lineups. And sometimes you only really need one player to really be the differentiation point or making a pivot, which we'll talk about, a couple of those throughout this as well. But there's definitely a lot of good opportunities this week. I think we could definitely be successful with what, with the salaries that we've got.
Yeah, I feel really good about cash this week. I didn't think I would. I got a little bit of a later start on the slate this week, just getting back to teaching and the world and all that stuff. So it took a while to get back into but once I started looking, I was like, man, there are some really mispriced players that are going to make it very easy to play cash this week. Not guaranteed, of course. Nothing's perfect, but I think you can fit in some high-end players because of the mispricing for some of the players. And I think this is a week that we can really take advantage of mispricing. And you want to take advantage of mispricing because cash is all about finding that floor and getting the players into your lineup who should exceed that 3 times value. Now, in a shorter slate like this, with far fewer poor defenses, right? The Lions aren't playing this weekend. So with the lack of bad defenses, maybe 3X might be a nice ceiling as opposed to a floor. I do think there'll be players who exceed that, of course. But, if you have a guy who's priced at 7K and he gets you 18, 19 points, you're probably going to feel all right about that. You don't need necessarily that 21, 22 points to get there. Of course, it'll be nice when it happens. But I think there's a little more wiggle room this week than there is in a regular season. Again, with the Houstons and the Detroits just not playing this week. Cash pool's up on the screen. I will ask the weekly question. Do we see the cash pool properly?
It's working.
Fabulous. 1 week. All it took was 1 week to sour me on the fact that I could share my screen. Fantastic. So we're taking a look there. And let's look at this cash game pool. Let's start with quarterback. I think, listen, I'm fairly locked in on one guy for myself in cash this week, so I think we can make it work. But I see viably 2 high-end quarterbacks and 2 low-end quarterbacks. And I think the most important thing about fantasy these days when it comes to a quarterback is you've got to have a quarterback that runs. I just don't see the viability in taking a statue at this point. I get that Tom Brady's going to put up points and Ben Roethlisberger can put up points, but they're not going to give you the rushing floor. And if they're inaccurate or the defense is playing well, they're not going to get you those hidden points by running for 30, 40 yards or getting you a touchdown, on the ground. I do think that therefore you need to look at rushing type quarterbacks. Russell Wilson's out of my pool simply because that's just a tough matchup. He's been not playing great towards the end of the season. And there are 4 basic rushing quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill runs a little bit more too. He could probably be considered. But to me, at the top end, you're looking at Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, or at the bottom end, you're looking at Mitchell Trubisky and John Wolford. Assuming Wolford starts over Goff, I did not see if there was an injury update. I got out of work late, and I'm just logging in to check the injuries. Gouda, have you seen anything today about who's starting for the Rams this weekend? I believe it's tomorrow. So,
the game is tomorrow, and no, there's still no definitive word. McVay said that he was progressing, but kind of coach speak, after surgery. I mean, you're going to progress as every day goes, but it's what's the speed of it. So I think they're going to bring that down. My guess is probably to a game time decision if we don't hear anything, in the morning. And I mean, to be fair, I'm probably would stay away from that Rams quarterback regardless. I mean, Wolford, I guess, gives some intrigue at 4,900 just because he's so low that if
he runs, he did run. I do like running.
Yeah, he does have some of that rushing floor, and a lot of it on the Rams side, I think, is going to depend what Seattle team shows up. I mean, is it going to be the first half Seattle team where they were putting up 30 points and they were giving up 30 points, or is it going to be the second half team where they're scoring 13 and they're giving up 10? The Seattle team has been a two-face all year, and we really don't know what team may show up. We know Russell plays well in the playoffs, but if this defense is going to play like they played in the second half of the year, Seattle may not need to do much. Let's not forget the Rams defense was extraordinary this year. Pro Football Focus had Aaron Donald, I think, number 2 interior defensive lineman, and Ramsey was like number 6 cornerback on the season. They both played extremely well, and the defense in general played really well. The one thing I'm going to say,
16 and a half points against them, 16 and a half DK points, which is why he's out of my pool against the Rams.
Yeah. And to your point, I think that I don't think you need to consider Wilson, at least not on the cash side, just because of the tough matchup. And frankly, I mean, Josh Allen's he's been on fire. He's got a good matchup. The Colts defense has struggled lately. But I do disagree with you on the Roethlisberger point. I know that he does not run anymore, and we're not getting anything there. But I think in Roethlisberger's case, that doesn't matter because of the insane volume that he has. The Steelers, they've just stopped running the ball. Roethlisberger's past 8 games, he's thrown it over 35 times each game. And 6 of those 8 games, he threw it over 40 times in those games. I mean, when you have a quarterback that's
but what's he done with it? He has 8.7, 15.4, 13.5, 17 points. I mean, half his games, he's significantly under 20 points.
Oh yeah, there were duds in there. There definitely was. I mean, the Steelers were not the same team the second half that they were in the first half. But again, you go back to they're probably not going to run it very much. Cleveland's
No,
defense is not great. If
no.
if you can get at least 35 to 40 pass attempts from your quarterback, and again for only $6,100, it's a pretty good value there for that type of volume. And frankly, I think a lot of it also potentially has to do with what they were doing with Chase Claypool and managing his reps. It's much different for defense to be out there when you're only concerning yourself, say, with Juju and Deontay Johnson as being real threats versus having all three of them out there. There were reports that came out going into week 17 that Claypool hadn't been as productive because they were managing his reps, and that obviously had a lot to do. But now it's the playoffs. I mean, the reins have to be off in this. You can't keep managing reps when you're trying to win a Super Bowl on a quarterback that who knows what he may look like next year. So
I love Claypool in a GPP, by the way. Just side note, Claypool in a GPP is awesome this week.
Oh yeah, I mean the ownership's going to be all over Deontay Johnson with the price that he has, and Claypool will be a nice little pivot. He hasn't done anything, but I personally believe that Roethlisberger is a very strong cash play this week.
Are you using him in cash?
I'm not, because I'm going with Josh Allen. But if I needed that salary savings, I personally would not hesitate to use Roethlisberger. I mean, my personal pool, my quarterbacks, it was either Allen or Roethlisberger. Those are the two that I was going, and I was able to put a lineup together that I really, really liked with having Allen in there.
I will tell you, my initial pool when I put it together this morning had Allen, Walford, and Roethlisberger. It did. So he was the one statue I was considering, and it was 100% because of that volume and the fact that Cleveland is not great against the pass. I just didn't. Six for the last 6 weeks, he's been well under 20 points, and that scares me. Cash now, He doesn't really need 20 points. 18 points will probably get you there. But I just think Allen, I think we can afford him this week. And I think the spend up on him is there. And Indianapolis has given up 300 yards or more through the air. And I think it's 5 out of their last 7 games. And when you look at who they've given him up to, it's been Houston and Green Bay. It's been good teams. Buffalo's a good team. Buffalo's a really good team. And they throw really well. And Josh Allen can get you a score from the goal line. He's not as consistent on the ground as Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts, but he can get you a 40-yard rushing game. He can score 2 touchdowns on the ground. He's had 2 touchdowns every week, for weeks. The guy has just been a machine. I like him a little bit more than Lamar Jackson. I wrote this in the article today. When I could take 2 guys with the rushing floor in decent matchups, and make no mistake, it's a good matchup for Lamar Jackson against Tennessee. I'm going to take the guy who's going to get more volume in that respect through the passing game. And Josh Allen may throw double the amount of attempts as Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, they're looking to run in Baltimore. And if it's Lamar doing the running, they're fine. But I also think this is a game where J.K. Dobbins can emerge a little bit. And I do like the Baltimore passing game. I just think I'd rather use them for a GPP, but I can't dismiss the rushing floor. I just think when all's said and done, if I'm going to spend down already to Roethlisberger, I'm probably just going to say, screw it. If I'm spending down, I'm spending down for a reason, and it's because I want to spend up at all 3 running back positions, or I want to get a couple of higher-end wide receivers. I'm going to go all the way down to Walford and just say, well, I only need 15 points. And if he can get me 5 or 6 on the ground, I don't need a ton through the air. And it's a great matchup against Seattle. I get it if you use Roethlisberger, though. Like, I can't crap on you for using Roethlisberger. I would have a much bigger concern if you were like, I'm going to use Phillip Rivers, or I'm going to use Drew Brees. I don't like either of those guys. I want rushing floor, though I get the volume is there with Roethlisberger because he was in the pool for me for a while. I'd probably, if Walford's named the starter for the Rams, then Trubisky's out of my pool anyway. And he's tenuous in that line, the pool. I don't love Trubisky. I love that he runs. But the Saints, I think, are going to, I don't know. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. And I don't think the Bears are going to do much offensively. But if I need that low priced guy and Walford's not starting, I think Trubisky's in play, but I don't love it. I probably like him more than Mayfield. I don't know. Trubisky's been really good for cash, but it's just you're not hitting that button this week. Like, I'm going to pull him simply because you know what? I just can't see a scenario where I'm putting Mitchell Trubisky in my lineup this week for cash.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I mean, Trubisky had, the Bears are 10-point underdogs, so that is something that you look at and say, well, if the game goes as Vegas projects, which generally Vegas is pretty spot on, as 10-point dogs, they're probably going to throw a ton. Doesn't mean he's going to he's going to do well, but
they lose
sometimes with
17
that
to 6. That
volume,
ain't gonna matter.
yeah, I mean that at least makes him viable in a GPP sense because the volume should at least be there to get to have the potential to get there. But I just think his style of play with what the other options are this week. I think, again, if you're at that 5,300 point with Trubisky, I'd rather go to 4,900 and get that rushing from Walford. And odds are they probably could put up a similar passing type of day anyway.
I agree, but I think when all said and done with the lineup builds that I assume we're both going with, and we haven't discussed our actual cash lineups yet, but knowing the way Gouda puts together a lineup, he and I have become pretty similar in our cash builds. When all said and done, we're probably both going Josh Allen. Like I know I haven't put together a build that I like that didn't involve Josh Allen as my quarterback at this point. He's the hottest quarterback in the league on a hot team. I just think it's a safe play, and Indy's defense hasn't been great. They were great earlier in the year. They have not been great lately. They've been getting into a lot of shootouts. Running back is a different scenario for me. When I look at running back, I like my high-end running backs in cash. I really do. And I do think we can fit 2 of them this week. I think it's tough because if you're playing the 6-game slate, now I know DraftKings has it set up with 2 3-game slates, and they also have the 6-game slate. And we're obviously talking with the 6-game slate. Your build changes if you're playing the 3-game slate. I don't love cash on 3-game slates, which is why I'm kind of pushing for that 6-game slate. Because I do think and I don't think as many sharp players are playing the 6-game slate. So I think there's some opportunity to make some money in cash games on the 6-gamer. But you also have to make sure you're paying attention to where you slot your players and the news that's coming out, because Alvin Kamara, as much as he's in a good spot, the Bears defense isn't great, but is good. And so it's not a great matchup, but Kamara should be okay against them because he should catch some passes. He's not off the COVID list yet. He's saying he'll play, but he's not off the COVID list. And I'm pretty sure the earliest he can be taken off is Sunday morning. They play on Sunday. Your lineup is locking. I know there's late switch, but you're putting your lineup in on tomorrow. And there's not a guy that you're going to replace Kamara with that's going to work out really for you. So it's a tough position to be in if you want to roll Kamara. I'm locking in Jonathan Taylor. His volume's been great. He's enough passing work and stays on the field enough even when the Colts are down. And just like in the NHL, I said this in the article, in the NHL, you ride your hot goalies. In the NFL, oftentimes you're going to ride your hot running backs. There's no running back in the league outside of maybe Derrick Henry who's as hot as Jonathan Taylor. Given if Kamara had a clean bill of health, it would be Kamara and Taylor for me as my high-end running backs. But, we're not sure yet. And so Derrick Henry is in play for me. I have some concern about the passing game work, as I always do, but clearly if Tennessee wins, they're going to do it on the back of Henry. And after the last few weeks, it's really hard to not play Henry in cash. The one value that I see, this is value number 1. There are 3 players that really stick out this week as really mispriced. 2 of them are receivers, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. To me, number 1, the running back that's most mispriced this week is Cam Akers. Mm-hmm. Cam Akers last week was coming off an injury, wasn't even expected to necessarily play. Everyone was talking about Malcolm Brown. Meanwhile, Cam comes in and gets 21 carries and 4 receptions. That is a ton of volume. He didn't do anything with it, right? He had 30 yards, and that's fine. He didn't do anything with it, but he got that volume. That's 3 out of 4 games for him with 20 or more carries. He's got passing game work. 25 touches, 20 or more touches even, for $5K. Yeah. That's a dumb price. Probably going with the backup quarterback.
Yeah, and also, too, don't forget the game where he didn't get to the 20 touches against the Jets. That was only because he got hurt. He would have gotten there, too. He's clearly established himself as the lead back there. It took a little time to get there, but he's definitely the number 1. I mean, Brown and Henderson aren't really going to cut into the work. And, yeah, as you said, at that price, if you're getting 20-plus touches at 5,100, I mean, you put the guy in your lineup, really, you don't even think twice about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't put him in my cash core simply because if I were to go Walford as my quarterback, I obviously don't want Akers as well. And then I can probably fit Henry, Kamara, and Taylor. And that's the reason you go Walford, right? Is if you want to go all 3. So I can't call him a cash core because there's some conversation in my head about possibly using Walford. But if I'm using Josh Allen, who I'm leaning towards, well, then Cam Akers is a lock button, because that's where we have to save some of that money to spend up at quarterback. We don't generally spend over $7,000 on a quarterback. So if we are, we need some of that value somewhere else. And generally we're going to get that at the running back position, because that's where we oftentimes will be spending up. We don't love spending up at the other positions. We put our money in running backs. But 20 carries, for $5,000 is ridiculous. And, and because he gets that passing game work, and Seattle's not great against the pass, Walford, another week of work, they're still going to rely on this running back. I think it's just, you lock him in, as Gouda said, you lock him in, you roll with him, you call it a day. And, if he doesn't do well, I think he's going to be a really popular play. So it's not like he'll kill you if he doesn't do poorly. But I think if he does great, you could be in big trouble if he gets 25 points, you can be in trouble if you don't have him in your lineup for cash. I do think there's value at the lower end a little bit. I think Washington gets behind Tampa Bay, which I think does take a little bit of Antonio Gibson out and gives more work to just on passing volume alone. And the same thing with Nyheim Hines. I don't think it kills Taylor, but they've really worked both of them a lot in their lineups. And if you take a look at Nyheim Hines's game log, you'll see he's been in that 10 or so range, with the volume alone, most of the season. I mean, he's been in that 10 range, especially since Taylor emerged. Over the last few weeks, he's hit 10 or more points in all but 1 week, and he's getting that with passing game work. He's getting 30 or 40 yards, 40 or 50 yards really on the ground, but he's getting 4 or 5 targets a week, and he's getting you that floor. If he gets in the end zone, 10, 12 points, gets in the end zone, now he's at 16 to 18 points. He's a big value. I don't love using him with Taylor, but if you decide, oh, you know what, I'm going with Kamara, and I'm going with Henry, and I need to spend down a little further than Akers, well, that's where Hines could come in and take care of that for you. And Kamara's out. Latavius Murray becomes a play, but you're playing it close in that case of Kamara, because you have a couple of pivots to make, because you're not just going to take a lineup and then go from Kamara to Murray and then leave $4,000 on the bench. I don't think you are $4,000. So you've got to have a couple of plays that you're going to make on Sunday to make it work. What are you seeing with running back that we haven't mentioned, or that you can reaffirm or dispute? Gouda, what's your feelings on that?
Yeah, so for Nyheim Hines, I think for cash, I probably stay away from him just because he hasn't been getting enough work, but it also kind of determines how you think this game is going to play out. So over the last 4 weeks, Hines has played. Sometimes these things can be a little skewed, so take it for what it is. But over the past 4 weeks, Hines has played 64% of the snaps when the Colts have been trailing. And again, the Colts are 7-point underdogs, and if the Bills play like the way that they have been these past couple of weeks, with that offense, Hines may see the field more than Taylor does. Again, that's not enough to scare me off of Taylor in cash. It's maybe more of a GBP consideration, but there's definitely justification for Hines there. Again, I'm not particularly crazy about him in cash, and if I was looking in that price range, I would definitely find a way to get the $200 extra to use J.D. McKissic. The two things that stand out the most for me for McKissic, aside from the numbers that he's put up with Alex Smith in there, Tampa Bay, allowed the fewest rushing yards to running backs this season, which obviously is a concern for Antonio Gibson. But the flip side, they were actually a pass funnel to running backs. They were number 2 in targets against them, and they were number 1 in receptions allowed to running backs. And if that's going to help anybody, I mean, J.D. McKissic, this game, sets up perfectly for him in that scenario. I'd be much more inclined to use McKissic with Alex Smith playing instead of Taylor Heineke. That would hesitate me a little bit on McKissic, but again, I think he's going to be a big part of the game plan regardless, just because of how Tampa's defense is structured. So at that point, I think McKissic, from a cash game perspective, is a much better option than Hines is. But the flip, I think McKissic will be the popular of the two. So on the GPP side, I think Hines becomes the better play, because not only does it provide the pivot off of McKissic, it gives you that pivot off of Taylor as well, who is definitely going to be one of the more popular plays this weekend because of what he's done the past couple of weeks and how he's come on as well.
Gosh, we love Jonathan Taylor at Bankster DFS. He has helped us cash a lot over the last month or so. You convinced me enough to switch over McKissick from to a preferred play as opposed to Hines on the lower end. I mean, I'm probably using Akers and I can make it work. So I'm not, because there's enough value at receiver to make that work. But if you don't want to use Cam Akers, then McKissick, that passing game work. He's been cash worthy a lot this year, and now that he's back down, he was up in the mid 6Ks for a while. Now that he's back down under 5K, that's a pretty decent price for McKissick. Before we move on to the next part, I would like to pull up some questions from those in the chat because I do want to make sure that we're addressing those. So Josh wants to know what we think about that. It is a Saturday only lineup, and I assume it's going to be GPP. It's very Bills heavy. And I like that. I like that if you're going to go Bills heavy, I do think Hines makes sense as a run back. I'm not so sure I'd run Jones with Godwin. And I don't have the Saturday thing opened up there. But I might run McKissick. Is McKissick already in that lineup? I can't tell.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I might run McKissick instead of Jones in that lineup. So you have kind of the run back, the playback. If Godwin's doing really well, then you're probably going to see McKissick doing well for Washington because they're going to have to throw. And I get the Logan Thomas is in there as well. I like him a lot as a Saturday only play. And of course, Josh Allen's great. It's a little chalky, but I mean, that's, if you're going to go Buffalo heavy, I think there's some run backs. The one switch I'd make would be the Ronald Jones. I'd switch over to McKissick probably. Anything that we're missing there?
No, I agree there. I like it.
And Big Matt wants to know, and I feel bad. Big Matt he's been in the Slack chat. If you guys are in our Bankster Slack chat, by the way, you'll get to know Big Matt very quickly. He is a very involved part of our community. But Matt has been sending me, he's been hemming and hawing all week what to do with the 3-gamers. He's curious about what to do in terms of cash. I don't love cash on 3-gamers. That doesn't mean you can't play it, but I do think your strategy changes a little bit. Obviously, we still don't worry about chalk. If things are chalk, great, no big deal. But I think you do not have to go with 3 running backs only in a 3-gamer. Now, especially given the makeup of this slate, especially the Saturday slate, I mean, you've got Taylor and then what on Saturday, you've got Akers, okay, and then I guess McKissick would be that third running back I'd run with, because you don't trust the Buffalo running back. I'm not using Carson, and I don't love the Tampa running backs, but I think you're probably better off running a Steph Diggs and, one of the Rams receivers. Seattle's got good receivers. Tampa Bay's receivers are really good. McLaurin's there. You can spend up on Logan Thomas. So, no, I wouldn't say that you have to run 3 running backs in cash on a 3-game slate. I do think looking here quickly at the Sunday slate, I'm probably not running running backs on that, though. If you really want to spend down elsewhere, you could run Henry, Kamara, and Dobbins could work. But then you're leaving yourself really thin elsewhere. I do think it's viable to run 4 receivers, or probably not running double tight end in cash, but not on this slate at least. The tight ends are there. But I think 4 receivers is very viable on these 3-gamers in particular, because there's just not a ton of running backs to make it work. It's not a full slate. So, you've got to bend some rules on 3-game slates. But I wouldn't play cash on 3-game slate, but not on this slate. I just don't think this weekend sets up well for 3 cash. But it's viable. I mean, it's doable. And I also think sharper players will be playing those, because I think the bigger prize pools are there and the higher fields. But I just take advantage of that, run the 6-gamer, because I think your options have doubled. I don't think they have doubled. You have double the amount of players and double the amount of games. That's Halo. I'm a math teacher, by the way. That's awesome. Can't do double 3. I think that's the way to go. I'd be okay with 4 receivers. Josh, did you have any other thoughts on that? Sorry, I know you've been kind of nodding along, and I went in a full Doug rumble there. Did you have different thoughts?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so my personal opinion, even on the short slates, I mean, I never stay away from cash games, simply because it gives you the best odds of making money. Even on the shorter slates. Now, yes, your builds of the lineups are not going to be the same as when we have, a 10 or a 12-game slate, or even a 6-game slate. You're not going to have that same floor in a lot of your spots, but at the same point, you can still, quote unquote, make an optimal cash lineup like we do under normal circumstances. So yes, I mean, I draw back my cash a little bit. Like, normal slates, it's 80-20 breakdown. On the smaller slates, it's more like 60-40, simply because if you have a good week, you're just as likely to hit the nuts as you're likely to not. So I'll put more towards GPP, but I still go majority, cash again, because it's your best odds of winning. And
I
when
agree.
you always want the best odds to win.
I agree with you, but I absolutely 100% agree, except if I'm running $100 this weekend, I'm probably playing 80 of it on the 6-gamer, running 65 to 70 of it, 65 to 70 of it in cash, running 10, $10 maybe in a GPP, $5 to $10. I'm not playing heavy GPP on the 6-game slate. And then I'm taking $20, $15, and I'm going to run it in GPP only on the three gamers. So I'm still playing 60 to 70% cash, but I'm doing it by taking the what I feel is the easier slate to build the cash build on, which
the
is
6. Yeah.
And then I'm taking my GPP shots instead on the 3 gamers. To me, that because you're limiting the pool, which limits your the amount of players you need to choose from to hit the nuts. You'll most likely share a prize pool in that respect, especially if the chalk hits. But I'll take a shared prize pool, no big deal there on a GPP.
Oh, yeah.
But so I think the philosophy is the same in terms of the amount of money and percentage put towards cash. I'm just configuring it in a way where I get more games to choose players from. Plus, being the less popular slate, there's a better chance that I'm not going up against sharper players. I want weaker players. There's a continuum of ability with players, and we're somewhere. I like to think the Bankster family and the Bankster crew is towards the higher end, right? Of every person who plays. Am I saying I'm the greatest player who's ever lived? No, but we know more than general public. That's why we do this. I want to play against less of those people who are up in that echelon of people who know what they're doing, and I think the 6-game slate is going to provide you with that opportunity to have more people who aren't as well versed on how to play cash, I would say. And I want to stay away from those sharper players. That's just, call it scared. I call it making money. But you're absolutely right with the percentage of money that I'm putting in. I'm still in that 60 to 70% cash. I play a lot heavier cash during regular season, but yeah, I'm putting the most of my money is going towards cash. Just different configuration. Josh wanted to follow up on his lineup. He said, so if he takes out Jones and puts in McKissick, he can change his defense to the Bills, Bucks, or keep the Rams. I mean, the Rams are a great defense, but I'd probably go to the Bucks at that point. But it's a defense, so pick the one you're most comfortable with. I wouldn't use the Bills. It would either be the Bucks or the Rams, and the Bucks play a worse offense. So I probably take the Bucks. Good. What would you with that defense?
I think I would lean to the Rams, but I'm in agreement. It's either the Rams or the Bucks.
Yeah. Again, if I get the choice to go against Taylor Heineke / Alex Smith or Russell Wilson, I'll take the defense playing that. But the Rams defense is better than Tampa Bay, and they're more likely to put one in the end zone because they have bigger playmakers. Like Aaron Donald is one of the most is maybe the most fierce defensive lineman and most likely to cause a strip sack fumble, touchdown. But I'd still rather go against the team that's got not Russell Wilson as the quarterback, even though they're on the road. Back to the cash pool. I'm glad. Thank you guys for putting the questions in the chat. Please continue to do so. We're here to help with that. Moving on from running backs, I'm borderline ready to pull J.K. Dobbins. By the way, from the running backs, I just think he's more cash game. He's more of a GDP guy. I love Dobbins, but when you really look at his volume, he's just not getting more than 15 carries a week. This could be the week he does, but when I say the word "could be," that then takes me into GPP land. Mm-hmm. Unless you're going to fight me on it, I'm pulling him from the cash game pool.
No, I'm the same with Dobbins. I mean, he gets a good chunk of the running back work, but the problem is you got your quarterback getting 10 to 15 carries also. Yep. If the quarterback, if it was more a quarterback that gets 5 carries, yeah, Dobbins is probably in the 20 touch neighborhood. And now, it's much more consideration, but just because of the Lamar Jackson factor, it always makes it tough for Dobbins to get more than like that 15 to 16 touch range.
Even when Ingram wasn't active, Dobbins still wasn't getting those 20 touches. So it's just like they're going to manage those touches, and they're gonna. He's the best of the bunch, but I'm still not I just don't think the floor is there, and he doesn't do anything in the passing game. He can. They just don't use him. I throw more to Gus. Weird. It's weird. Speaking of throwing, let's talk about receivers. I love the mid-range for receivers this week, which is words you don't hear me say too often. I'm usually top end or punt. The mid-range is awesome this week. I will say, I mean, Michael Thomas is 6,400. Is that even right? Is that a correct price point there? I mean,
to me, it's crazy. I know they haven't activated him yet, but I believe I think it's pretty much a lock that he's coming back. I think that was basically the reason they put him on IR was so he was, because I think it was only a 1 to 2 week injury, but they said, we got the playoffs wrapped up anyway. Let's just put him on IR because we know he'll be ready for that first playoff game. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be playing. I mean, at $6,400, it's just silly.
Yeah. Even if he has a floor game, he's at 16 to 20 points.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's, with just the way that Breeze targets him and looks at him. Yeah. I mean, at that price and again, and this is, our normal mantra is, 1 player per team max. That's it. But, on a shorter slate, even though it is 6 games, if you use 2 guys, it's fine. I mean, especially if it's, 2 guys like Kamara and Thomas who get 65 to 70% of the offensive production in New Orleans anyway. I mean, it's fine. And again, with that price Thomas is, it's almost like, well, how can you not use him at that price?
He's a 9K receiver at $6,400, but I don't have him in my current cash lineup because if they don't activate him, then I don't know what to do. There's no natural pivot. I guess you go to Jarvis Landry at that point, but and Landry's fine. He's in the pool, or he's not in the pool, but he was borderline pool. I talked about him in the article about that. I liked other guys at that point. I don't have too many people at that price point in the pool, but I don't know. You've got to have that. I would like to know by tomorrow that I felt a little more comfortable that he was playing, but if he plays, I mean, shoot, that price is crazy. I mean, it's funny. You look up a little bit. DK Metcalf is cheaper than Tyler Lockett, and that speaks a lot to how Jalen Ramsey has destroyed DK Metcalf's value here. And I couldn't touch either of them. I'm not, other than Akers, I really can't stand that game for a fantasy perspective. But man, DK Metcalf's price, it just looks nice. That's GPP, screams GPP, but I can't touch it. Especially when you've got, this guy right here, Deontay Johnson, he's had 1 game this whole year outside of this last week, because this last week can't count because they weren't even trying. They didn't care. They played hard, but they didn't have Ben. So that doesn't count. And then this game, they benched him for part of it with the dropsies, the Buffalo game. But outside of those 2 games, there's not a single game that Deontay Johnson started and finished where he didn't get 10 or more targets. I'll take that all day in cash. It matter what's happened. He's had the dropsies. He's missed some plays. It doesn't matter. Ben keeps throwing to him. Benched him. It doesn't matter. Ben keeps throwing to him. He's going to get his targets. The guy runs great routes. He's got to work on his hands, but he's a shifty receiver. They've been talking him up for a year now as he's very Antonio Brown like in the way he runs his routes. He did really well with Ben as his quarterback. Deontay Johnson, there's nothing about his target share that says that he's not going to have that kind of production. Maybe it is not as explosive as Antonio Brown, but he's definitely getting open and Ben looks for him. $6,200. He's such an easy cash game for me. Now, if the choice is him or Michael Thomas, I'm going him right now because of the certainty of his health and ability to play. Also, I do think the matchup is far more friendly for Pittsburgh than it is for New Orleans. I would like to find a way to get them both in the lineup. But right now, Deontay Johnson is in my cash core. Robert Woods is good at that price point. Jarvis Landry, as I said, is good at that price point. And Antonio Brown should be okay. I don't know why I have Antonio Brown there. He's not a preferred play. That was meant to happen. We're going to put that there. And then there's another screaming value in Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown is stupid priced. I'll let you tie it if you want to, because I know you were talking about values earlier, and I've rambled again. Shocker. I'll let you talk about that if you want to talk about Marquise Brown and any other receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Brown, the tale of two seasons with him, right? In the beginning of the year, I mean, he was a guy that I talked up in the offseason. I, had him in a couple of my best ball articles. I drafted a ton of him, and he just fell flat on his face. Now, a lot of it had to do with Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar overthrew him on, I think it was like 7 or 8 deep balls the first 8 games of the year that would have been, easy 50-yard touchdowns. So some of that was the quarterback play. Brown wasn't playing terrible, but the production wasn't there. In the past couple of weeks, with they've been getting the ball to Brown better, and he's been producing. And look at that, your number one receiver produces, and there goes your offense taking off. I don't think it's a coincidence that they've woken up as Brown has produced. And again, Tennessee can put up points, but Tennessee's defense is not very good. We've seen Tennessee get smoked the past couple of weeks. Look what Brandon Cooks did to them last week. So I don't think Marquise Brown is going to have any major issues here. It's just a matter of Lamar being able to get him the ball. But again, at 5,400 at that price, with the upside that he brings and what he can do, he's a fantastic cash game play there. And the other guy that you have highlighted there that I really do like is
Brown and cash. By the way, how crazy is that?
What would you say?
Marquise Brown and cash. How crazy is that? This year, I've recommended Marquise Brown and Tyreek Hill and cash. Things I said I never do.
Yep. Well, 2020 was that kind of year, right? And yes, and John Brown at 4,700. I mean, I think Brown was like 3,500 last week, like some just totally egregious price that I think everybody missed. Everybody just completely missed it last week. But again, nobody thought the Bills were actually going to play their starters the whole game either. But that's a different story. But yeah, Brown at 4,700. Remember, Cole Beasley is out. So Brown's always kind of the number 2, but Beasley plays a big role. With Beasley out, I think that brings more targets to John Brown. His last 3 games, he's got double-digit points at 4,700. That's a great thing to be looking at. And also too, Brown really brings a different element to Josh Allen's game. It opens up, and you can see the couple of games that Brown missed. The Bills' offense was a little off without Brown out there. And having Brown in the lineup really does do a lot for Josh Allen. And that's, as much as he does feed Diggs, I do believe he's most comfortable with John Brown. They had a really strong connection last year, and it's shown this year still. And again, I think at 4,700, it's a great value that we can have at receiver without needing to really go into the bottom of the barrel to find somebody to make the lineup work of what you want. So I think Brown's a really good place to look at.
Yeah, I love him this week. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I don't actually see I'm tinkering around just with the potential, just because the question was asked with the 4, what do you do? How do we pull off a 4 running receiver type of a lineup for cash? One of the things that you'll notice this year, and Gudo was talking about it, it's one of the things that has been brought up time and again. Josh Allen is better when John Brown plays. It is a verifiable fact. He is just better when Brown plays. So, and that helps Brown. Brown's been really good for the most part. He was great last year. He's been really good this year when he's been healthy. And 4,700 is still too cheap, especially in this matchup where, again, the Colts just keep giving up tons of passing yards. The other wide receiver that I would look at the low end, there's a couple of receivers at the lower end that I kind of like. Zach Pascal, Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones doesn't look good for this week, so Higgins could see some extended work in a game that, Cleveland's probably going to have to throw against Pittsburgh. But Cam Sims is a guy that I really like. We've had him in the pool here and there over the last few weeks because he started to see an increase in the targets. We had that run where he had the 9, then he only had 2 targets, but then he finished the year with 8, 9, and 5. That's 22 targets over 3 weeks. That's 7 targets a week for $3,900. That's not bad on a team that's going to have to throw against a team that, if they struggle against anything, it's against those slot wide receivers. I don't love the Washington passing game, and I do think McKissick and Thomas and McLaurin are clearly ahead of Sims on the I don't know. I would say the target scale, or really Sims has out-targeted them in a lot of the games. But I think, in a playoff game, they're probably going to look to those guys first. They're the playmakers. But Cam Sims just finds a way to get open, and he's got those targets, and he hasn't been there on volume. He needs 12 points to get there, but he's a touchdown away. So he's pretty close. He's at least 2x, a little more than 2x on volume, and so if he were to find his way to the end zone, he pays off. At that price point, it's something I'm very much considering in cash games, just to help me spend up elsewhere. Not in this that I put together where we talked about, because boy, it's really hard to decide which three receivers I want between John Brown, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, and Michael Thomas. It's really hard to pick one. So if you put all four in, then Cam Sims doesn't find his way. But if you pull one out because you need to save a couple of bucks to spend up at a second running back, well, maybe that's where Cam Sims comes in instead of Michael Thomas, let's say. And so he's viable if you're spending up in a few running back positions. I don't love this lineup, by the way. Not going to leave it on the screen if I don't love it. Just tinkering. Speaking of lineups, Gouda, I'm going to throw this one your way. Josh threw another lineup in there. This is the Sunday lineup. He says he doesn't like the lineup. What can we do? I see two spots that I would change, but I want to hear your opinion first.
So, yeah, I don't like Jimmy Graham. Graham is definitely a guy that I would go from, and probably the Browns defense too, if you have the money to edit it. I mean, and I didn't see James Conner in there. Yeah, Conner would be my definitely the first spot to get out. The Steelers just aren't running the ball. Even if the Steelers are up, they're going to be passing. I mean, granted, Conner will be very low owned in GPPs, but really, you need Conner to score 2 touchdowns to even probably get close to the type of value you want from a GPP play. I do like the way that you went though with Tannehill, Brown, and Davis, with Marquise Brown as the bring back. I think for a GPP that's fantastic because I do believe, again, people are going to be looking at Derrick Henry. They're going to remember what he did the past couple of weeks. All the talk about him being over 2,000 yards. ESPN was putting out stats that, I mean, to me, it's very arbitrary. You could figure out record breakers with anything, but over his past 20 games, Derrick Henry has the most rushing yards, ever in a 20-game span. So there's all this fanfare around Derrick Henry, and everybody's going to remember too what he did to the Ravens last year in the playoffs. So you're going to have probably crazy ownership on Henry, especially on a short slate, especially on a Sunday-only slate. So I think using that pass game is an incredible leverage play on a GPP. But I do think those 3 spots you'll have to tinker with and figure out what'll be better. I mean, like I said, Conner, Graham, and the Browns D is probably stuff I would stay away from. If you wanted to only change 2, I guess I'm okay with Graham because he is a red zone target, so he always has a good shot at a touchdown every week. And realistically, if he's scoring you a touchdown, he's probably getting you another 2 catches outside of that. He's probably getting you to 4x if he scores a touchdown. So it's not the worst play at tight end, but I think Conner is the main guy you got to figure out there and do something else with.
Do something don't do here. That we haven't done much. Let's pull up. Let me put this lineup in there, and it's going to be tough to do because I can only use Sunday players. Oh no, it's not. I can just open up only Sunday players. That's what happens when you're old, Gouda. You don't realize you can do these things. So what do we have? We had AJ Brown, Marquise Brown, Corey Davis.
Yep.
And then he had Jimmy Graham, who we're going to be pulling, but that's okay. Brown's defense, is that what I heard?
Yeah, he had Brown's defense in there.
Flex was Michael Thomas.
Yep.
Then running backs were Kamara and James Conner. I'm going to pull Conner from that. I'm going to pull Graham from that. And I'm going to pull the Browns from that right now. So let me know what you think about this move here, Gouda, if this is something that we can do for our Josh here. We're going to use Gus Edwards here. Gus Edwards, I love Dobbins. I just spent a long time talking about Dobbins, but Gus Edwards still gets work. He's had 5 targets over the last 3 weeks, which isn't a lot, but it's something. And he's had 9 or more carries in each of those weeks. So while Dobbins is getting work, Gus Edwards is getting work too. And that Baltimore is going to want to run the football. That allows us, I hope, I'm going to see if that allows us. Does it allow us? Can we make it work? We can. I don't love the Titans defense, but I think Gus Edwards and Jared Cook is probably a better combination than James Conner and Jimmy Graham. If you don't like that, you can always pull Jared Cook. I love Eric Ebron this week. You could pull Ebron in there. And now you've got yourself 3,100. You can use the Bears. Again, we'd prefer to go up. So again, this is where you tinker a little bit. You can come off of Ebron. Now you can go down to, let's say, Cole Kmet. Well, now you've opened up every possible defense. Great. I can run the Saints. They're the best defense on the slate. I can run the Steelers. It doesn't matter. And honestly, Edwards and Kmet, I just don't think are much worse than Connor and Jimmy Graham. You improve your defense. Or, again, if you don't care about defense, you can run a much better tight end. What are your thoughts on that? Good. Is that a way we can play this lineup to make some of that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we go back to finding value and finding upside. I mean, in the past 5 weeks, Komet's had 6 or more targets, and right, 5. Yeah, in the past 5 games, Komet's had 6 or more targets in 4 of those 5 games for $3,000. That's exactly what you want. And again, if you can, improve the defensive spot, and again, realistically, Gus Edwards probably, he's got the same upside that Connor does. They're just not using Connor. They're not using the running game in general. And and Edwards,
what's Connor done?
Nothing. He really hasn't.
He catches some passes. I mean, he catches some passes. He's getting the targets. I don't like him in this game. I don't like him in this matchup. I'd rather come off of Connor. I think what I have on the screen now, even if we just pull the running back, pull the tight end, pull the defense, I don't think you want to touch that part of the lineup. I think that's a good GPP strategy because, as Good has said, we're coming off of Henry, which is tough to come off of Henry, but if the passing game rocks for Tennessee and Henry doesn't, you have now jumped up a lot of the field because Henry's going to be crazy chalk. So you've just set yourself up for a real big win. Obviously, I'm only running this in a tournament. I'm just GPP only. I'm not doing cash on this, but this is a tournament type of a lineup. And then those last 3 spots are hit or miss. But normally we talk about don't spend up on a defense, don't worry as much about defense. I think you do worry a little bit more about defense on a smaller slate like this because there's kind of a difference between running Tennessee out against a really hot Baltimore offense versus running the Saints out against Mitch Trubisky. I do think there's something to that. And so, or the Pittsburgh Steelers out. So I do think that there's some viability to moving positions around to get a better defense in this case. So yeah, I do think getting rid of Connor and Graham. I don't love Graham. The thing about Cole Kmet too, one of the things I want to talk about with Cole Kmet as we move into our cash game, and he is my cash game tight end. One of the things I want to talk about with Kmet is those targets. Like with those 6 targets and with 4 of the last 5 games, but he hasn't done anything with them. He has only put up double figures once in those 4 games. You know who we had that same conversation about earlier this year? Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas was getting all of this volume. He was running a ridiculous amount of routes. He led the league in routes run per drop back at the tight end position. That's a huge deal because that means he's out on routes. When you're out on routes, you have a better chance of catching passes. If you're blocking, you're just basically an offensive lineman. It doesn't matter that you're on the field for snaps. When you're looking at tight end, you never look at snaps. You look at routes run per drop back because, again, otherwise you're just a tight end. You're just an offensive lineman. I want tight ends who are going to go out and catch passes. Well, Logan Thomas, at the beginning of the year, he had all this volume, 8, 9, 10. Oh, he didn't do anything. He has 7 points and 6 points and 1 point. Yeah, how do we feel about that now? Look at the run Logan Thomas has been on: 13, 24, 10, 26, 13, 12. He's getting, a little bit more target share. I mean, 16 and 12, but really 4, 5, 9, and he's finally catching the ball. He's got a better quarterback with Alex Smith, and I would even say Tyler Heineke and Kyle Allen were better than Dwayne Haskins, but they found that role in the offense for him. Well, Cole Kmet's doing a lot of the same stuff. Like, no, he hasn't done anything with those routes and with those targets, but when the volume is there, eventually they start connecting. I mean, 7 of 8, he didn't get a lot of yards and he lost the fumble. That didn't help. But he caught 2 of the 6 passes, 4 of the 7 passes, 5 of the 6. He didn't do much with them because his quarterback sucks a little bit. But the volume's there. And so I like Cole Kmet this week. To me, it's an easy cash game play because we like tight end when we can. I like Eric Ebron. I think Eric Ebron is a little expensive at 3,700, but he's had a really surprisingly good year with more 10-point games than you realize. And Cleveland's awful against tight ends. They continue to be awful. They were awful last year, the year before, and they're still bad against tight ends. But I'd rather save the $700 and spend it elsewhere. I just don't think I can get up to Jared Cook or Logan Thomas with the build that I have. I'm fine with Kmet at tight end. I'll take the volume. He's going to have a breakout. He's a talented kid. Thoughts, Gouda?
Yeah, I'm in the same spot. I mean, the big thing with the tight end position, it's if you're going to spend up, if you're going to go into that Cook or Thomas or even Mark Andrews area. I mean, Andrews is not in the pool. I mean, he's obviously viable, but if you're spending up a tight end, the big question becomes, all right, well then where are you spending down? Are you comfortable having Cam Sims in your lineup? Do you want to come off of Marquise Brown? Where are you getting that value from? If you're not getting it at tight end, if you're paying up at tight end, where does the value come from in the other positions? That's really, I think, when you're building your lineups, that's kind of the way. That's the way I look at it. It's the way I believe you should look at it as well. Is all right. If I'm not taking the tight end value, where am I taking the value from another position, and what is that going to do to my lineup? What is it, make it look like?
It's not a player versus player decision. It's a 2v2 or maybe a 3v3. It's what else am I doing? It's like when you ask about a trade in season long. Okay, well, yeah, I'm giving up this guy for this guy, but who's replacing him in that position? Like, it's not just that. It's what else does it do to your lineup? So that's a really good point to bring up, Gouda. Like, yeah, okay, yes, Mark Andrews is better than Cole Kmet, but, again, are we using Cam Sims instead of Marquise Brown in that respect? I mean, I'd rather use Cole Kmet and Marquise Brown than Cam Sims and Mark Andrews. I just think that's a safer play for cash. GPP, different story. Andrews, you spend up, you spend down at receiver. You hope to catch a lottery ticket. Miles Boykin, long ball kind of a deal. Sure, no problem. Cash, you've got to take into account, what we're changing. That's a great point, Judah. Defense, I wrote up, whoever you can fit. It's defense. I mean, we probably want to avoid certain teams. I don't love Cleveland. I don't love Tennessee. But I would say you can find a defense between Tampa, who's going up against, Alex Smith on one leg or Taylor Heineke, Seattle, who's woefully underpriced given that they're probably going up against John Walford. And I know we talked about John Walford as a cash play because of the volume he can get, but he's still not a great quarterback, and Seattle's got a really high pressure defense. Or the Washington football team. Tom Brady's not going to run around outside the pocket. I've noticed oftentimes when the pressure comes, he'll just dip down in the pocket. You're welcome, by the way, Josh. He said thank you to both of us, so you're welcome. Tom Brady dips down the pocket. He'll take the sack. That's one thing Tom Brady's doing as he's getting older. He's just taking more sacks and just making it up on the next play, which he can do. Washington's got a really fierce front seven. They're one of the best in the league. Chase Young is just freaking awesome. And Washington's only 2,400. I do think Washington's a live dog in this game. If you're betting it, I think there's some value in taking Washington home. The two other teams who went into the playoffs as home teams, division winners with less than, with under 500 records, both won their games, Carolina and Seattle. So I do think there's because of their defense, Washington's a live dog in this game. And they're going to get there. If they get there, it's because of their defense. So I think at that price point, there's enough that they can do to pay it off. And they're not going to kill you. Again, worst you can do with the defense is -4. But Washington's got a hell of a lot more upside than Tennessee does. And again, Tennessee's going up against a quarterback who can scramble out of trouble. Washington's going up against a 43-year-old guy. He's going up against skinny me. Like that's, I'm not running around either. So he's, he'll take that sack. And so, I don't spend all day on defense. Is there a different defense that I'm missing there, Gouda?
I think the Colts you can consider. They haven't been great.
Tell me on that. Tell me.
Sell you. So I know they haven't been great lately, but number one, they've got a lot of talent on that defense. They had a very good run in the beginning of the year. They've recorded at least one sack in 14 of their 16 games this year, and they forced a turnover in 11 of their 16 games this year. So, at a $2,300 price point, sometimes you need that extra $100 or $200. And again, if it's the defense, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. How many times do we use the Jets at $2,000 this year? and they got us 2 points. But what it was able to, give us in other positions of what we can spend up, it helped. And again, we're not looking for 15 points from a defense. It's great when you get it, but you want, 2-3 points, you're happy with it. And the Bills' O-line was not great this year. Allen is prone to sacks. Occasionally he has the dropsies. He can, fumble the ball when he's scrambling. The Colts can make plays on defense. It's not the most ideal spot to be in, but again, if you need that extra couple $100 to make your other positions fit, sacrifice defense to get quality elsewhere. It goes a really long way. And the Colts have the playmakers to give you 3 points.
My camera doesn't pan up, so I won't stand up because you then can't see me, and all you will see is my gut on camera. But I have to say, well done, sir. We're on Wild Card Weekend. Found a way to talk about the freaking Jets. Well done. I thought we would get through the whole stream. You have once again signaled the end of our show by bringing up the New York freaking Jets during a playoff. The playoffs, the 2-14 Jets have been discussed during our Wild Card Weekend playoffs. This is, if you don't think Gouda is a mad genius, then you are not paying attention. Wow. Jets.
I'm getting ready for our 13-3 2021 season where the entire offense breaks out with no Adam Gase.
Oh my goodness! Somehow, poor Mark is going to make a Jets lineup this week and enter it into a millie. Somehow, we've done that to him, folks. You know the drill. If we start talking about the Jets, the show ends. That's how this works. Gouda must have to go to dinner or something. There must be some reason he started talking Jets. No, we made it to the end anyway. Guys, if you want to know more, if you have more questions, you want to get involved in our Slack chat. If you have questions about lineups, the 3-game slate, the 6-game slate, GPP, I know we didn't cover a ton of it. We talked about some of our favorite plays, mispriced guys. Please head on over to banksterdfs.com. $4 a week. It's under $4. Under $4 a week. And it's not just the Slack chat. It's not just football. It's not just the articles. It's not just the player pools. It's all of it. It's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, golf, MMA, NASCAR, everything. College sports, niche sports, tennis, EuroLeague, whatever. We got it. Seriously, I'm not even joking. For the EuroLeague alone, for the tennis alone, for the MMA alone, NASCAR alone. What did I forget?
Sports cards.
Oh, that's right. We have sports. Oh my goodness. We have sports cards. We talk about sports cards, and now we have a weekly sports card article from Chicagoland talking about this week's was talking about should you join into group breaks. So last week's sports cards are huge now. Last week we talked about should you get your cards graded, the value of that. Thank you for reminding me of that. I mean, we cover everything, sports betting as well. All of it is $3.90 a week. It's not per, it's not each, it's one price, $4, get you everything. Come join us. Come hang out for us. Come hang out with us for a week. Come see what we're all about. If you hate it at the end of the week, let me know, unsubscribe and I'll refund you. I don't care. It's not a big deal. It's not about the money for me. Right. We're just going to hang out, have some fun. Come see what we do. You're not going to want to leave. Banksterdfs.com. Come find us on YouTube. Just check my name, Doug Shane. That's me, Doug Shane. Like, share, subscribe so you know when we're going live, when we've got videos. Come check us out. You can find Gouda if you liked what you heard from Michael Gudadero. Go find him on Twitter. Give him a big follow at the Big Gouda. Come follow me at Bankster17 on Twitter. Again, don't forget to come check us out, banksterdfs.com. So much going on. Hockey season's upon us. NBA's live. Everything. Football playoffs. We appreciate everything, guys. We will be back probably I'll be back Tuesday night live for our NHL preview before opening face-off on Sunday night before opening night. Sorry, Wednesday night. Wednesday night's opening night. We're going live with myself, the Hook Monster, Josh Hook, and Goody. Sean Goodwin will be live with me talking about the NHL season. And then I think Gouda and I will come back for another NFL live stream next Friday night. Same bat time, same bat channel, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, enjoy your football weekend. Stay safe.